Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion. Again, it's a Thursday. It's a beautiful Thursday here in Minnesota. We're supposed to be somewhere in the 50s. That's why I'm wearing my golf shirt. As a matter of fact, I got my Take shirt on. So we're really all in on this live take. This should be pretty great. So yesterday, what really was intriguing was the movement we saw yesterday out of Boeing and the influence that had not only on the Dow, but in the market itself. And as a matter of fact, early on, it looked like the Dow was going to be absolutely flying to the upside, up 170 plus points pre-market. And then all of a sudden we're up 100 points. Then it's 50 points. By noon, it's 30 points. By 1 o'clock, it's 50 points to the upside or downside. And then all of a sudden, 2 o'clock, we're down about 100 points. You think, oh, well, we only got an hour left. Remember, the theme of 2020 has been the last hour or two, wait to see what kind of movement we're going to get. Well, we finished the day in the Dow down about 344 points. Boeing, which had traded all the way up to $222 a share, actually went into negative territory. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea of just how volatile things can be at times. Now, the NASDAQ had a pretty similar path actually yesterday. It started off positive territory, held on to it a little bit longer, really started to leak. But by the very end of the day, that's when the real pressure came. That final hour from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, or from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock if you're out on the East Coast, that's where we really saw the pressure come on. And the S&P 500 down about 40 points yesterday as well. So combination of a lot of things, but there were some good things going on in the market yesterday, earnings wise, particularly. Take a look at what was going on with Target. New all-time highs, absolutely screaming to the upside. It was up about 5% or so, hit up, I think, around 172. Just an amazing quarter. When you look at all the various numbers, you could not find a flaw. And the stock continues to show you a lot of the most important part is this is the company that actually makes and has margins. We talk about this all the time. We look at Amazon, we look at Walmart, and we do some of the comparisons, the big box stores. Take a look over at Target and take a look over at those margins. That's where you're going to see a huge distinct difference between that name, some of the other names. Doesn't even mean they're not all great names, but this one certainly stood out, and you could see what was happening yesterday. Ross Stores was up about 4% yesterday. TJ Maxx up about 3.5% yesterday as well. So you get the idea. We had some nice retail that was actually coming through for us and moving to the upside. But the incredible thing yesterday that really stood out, and I think a lot of the movement certainly was part of this, what spurred part of this at least, take a look at the volumes. And I do bring it up every day, and I'll continue to bring it up every day because it's really important. It's why we think the options world is the place to be. And it's the derivatives that give you the opportunity to be able to leverage. When leverage was taken away from the markets back in the financial crisis, the place where you got leverage, that's in the options world. How about 37.3 million contracts yesterday? How about that? How about in the early part of the session before noon yesterday, Tesla had already traded 1.3 million option contracts. NIO, almost a million contracts. Well, by the end of the day, we see the Tesla actually continued that pace that it was on. It actually closed the day trading over 2 million contracts yesterday, well above any kind of average for them. NIO about 1.2 million, so it slowed down a little bit. Apple well below its normal volumes, maybe getting stolen a little bit away, but traded about 1 million. But you've got three stocks right there, all trading 1 million or more contracts in a day. Boeing, huge difference from average, and that was up about 770,000 contracts yesterday. Just trying to give you a little bit of background and have an understanding of why we get so excited every single day for the markets, and every single day we talk about all the different opportunities that are there. And I think yesterday, by the time we came over to do the take, I believe we were at somewhere close to about 10 or 12 unusual option activities. The live broadcast is actually showing my dog who just jumped into the room. Love him to death. So one of the other areas, I'll jump back to that in a second, but one of the other areas that was really flying to the upside for the majority of the day until the very end of the day was energy. Energy really started to explode to the upside. We had crude up above $42 a share. You looked over at Concho, Diamondback, Continental, all of those names up 5% or more, some of them up as much as 7% yesterday. That completely flipped, just like the markets, completely flipped in the final 2 hours of the session, where they all sort of came back to reality of closer to flat, held on a little bit better probably at the end of the day by Continental. But other than that, they really pulled back in a significant way. So that was something that stood out. What else that stood out was second day in a row, utilities was the leader to the downside, down a couple of percent once again, but it was a pretty broad move to the downside. it wasn't a one specific area that was pulling on the markets. It wasn't just the industrials, wasn't just the financials. This was a broad market move with sector by sector by sector, all moving close to about 1% to the downside and pulling on the markets kind of late. So you jump back into today. Now we're starting to see coronaviruses on the rise once again. We see a lot of people getting a little bit more nervous about what's going on. We still have all of what's going on with the elections and so forth. But as people parse their way through all of that, well, the markets in the pre-market, we were down about 50 points. We opened down about 140 points. Then we actually started to come back. We were down about 50 points not too terribly long ago. Now down about 105 points. So you can see we've got a little volatility going on here. As a matter of fact, I didn't mention about the VIX yesterday, but the VIX today trading close to 24. And that's pretty interesting because we'd starting to get into that 21, 22, and now started to get a little bit of a lift back up. So we'll see how things shake out as we continue throughout the day. But certainly we're watching that volatility index very closely. It's been a great measure for a really long period of time and continues to be so. So the rise in unemployment claims, that was a little bit of a surprise probably today. So that was another area that was contributing a little bit to the downside and a little bit of a pull on the markets. But what wasn't pulling on the markets? How about Sonos? Now, we've had unusual option activity in this name on multiple occasions. We're even getting it again today following their numbers. But how about this? Not only did they beat in their earnings, sales up 15%, their growth in DTC 67%. That's a big number. That gives you a pretty good reason why that stock was up about 17%. I think it's up even higher than that now, well over $20 a share. It was trading at $17 a share. So really nice move to the upside out of that one. Sticking with some of the earnings, how about L Brands? Holy smokes. L Brands up 12% today. That one crushing earnings as well. A lot of those hygiene products, you go to Bed Bath Beyond, those sales 55% to the upside. Wow, that's some pretty nice numbers that they're putting up there. So earlier, as we were down a little bit more, although we are starting to tumble once again down 125 points. So this is probably fairly accurate then. I was looking across, and once again, pretty stair-step move across all the various sectors. I'm looking at the financials. They were down about 1%. Industrials down about 0.8%. Got materials down about 1%. JP Morgan, Capital One, your usual names, PNC Financial, Dow, Cat, throw in some of those material names as well. A little bit of a drag to the downside. What's not dragging and what hasn't at least been dragging to the downside, and I'm looking right now, you got the NASDAQ up 40 points. You got the Dow down 126 points. Why is that? I'll tell you what, part of the reason is a little bit of what we're seeing going on in biotech right now, which is really having a pretty nice day, but it's been across a lot of different drivers. You got Tesla still moving to the upside, got some of those stay-at-home stocks, the DocuSigns, Workday, Moderna, NetEase, variety of different names that are actually pulling on the NASDAQ and bringing it to the upside. And when I mentioned Moderna, there's multiple different names right now, of course, when you look over in the biotech space that are definitely helping the NASDAQ out in a pretty significant way right now as they're pulling that to the upside. So as we get in, we had about 12 unusual option activities in the first 45 minutes or so of the trading session. Now we're a little over an hour into the session. I'm sure we've added about 3 or 4 or 5 more of those. But the one that really stood out for me, I really had a hard time distinguishing which one. What do I want to pick today? Where do we want to go? What really stands out? Well, we've got some numbers that continue to come about housing that have been absolutely extraordinary. So this one actually ended up being fairly easy for me. Louisiana Pacific. Now, it's not a name that everybody knows. It's not one of these household names that everybody says, you know what? Oh, I know exactly what they do. So building products, new construction, remodels, all that type of thing, repairs, all of those. This stock already today is at 52-week highs. So what are we seeing and what makes this an interesting trade? Well, there was a buyer a while back. They were buying the November 34 calls. Those calls have exploded to the upside, a really strong move to the upside. Stock trading today right around $34.30 a share. When it was trading at those levels, they were taking off these November calls that were bought, 10,000 of those, taking off those, but actually going out into the future, February, and buying the 37 calls. So they bought 10,000 of the February 37 calls for about $2.10, all in a single trade. So we talk about this all the time. This is an opportunity for me to be able to educate you just a little bit. They bought the November 34 calls. Those produced very nicely as the stock now, as I just mentioned, is hitting 52-week highs today. They're able to sell those, take that profit off the table, put some of that money back in because they continue to believe that this stock has upside. And if you looked at some of those numbers today, you can kind of understand why. As we've seen some of the housing numbers actually over the last couple of weeks, they've been really, really extraordinary. So a little bit quick here today on the take. I do see some questions. And oh, by the way, I meant to tell everybody, if you want to, you can put in some questions here in the Q&A anytime you want, throw them in there. Now, we don't all, none of us have all day, but we could take a little bit of time. So let me see if I can find some. Pete, is it time to short Tesla? No. And here's why. It's not that I'm so bullish on Tesla or anything like that, but this is a name that has defied gravity for a really long period of time. I have seen people attempt to do this when the stock was $100, when the stock was $150, when the stock was $250, and I'm talking pre-split numbers here. So I think you just have to understand that there is something magical going on right now. And don't forget this. This is a company that I've said for a really long period of time, and this is right out of so many other people, but particularly Gene Munster, who said this back in 2017. This is a tech stock. This isn't an auto stock. When you think of this stock, think of the car as the hardware, just like with Apple, the phone is the hardware. And then you've got the software side of everything else. So data and everything that they're collecting, all of the other aspects of what they do. And it is an amazing company, what they've been able to accomplish. But I don't know. I'm personally not comfortable shorting it. I really am not. If a person were to do that, I would suggest an option strategy to do that rather than using the stock. First of all, the stock's going to cost you a lot of money to borrow to short. That's a different thing altogether. That's why oftentimes you'll see me smile sometimes when I sit on the set of shows and I hear people say, yeah, I'm shorting Tesla, right? You know, traders. And I think to myself, well, maybe, but do you really understand the whole process of doing that? Because to borrow that money is going to cost you extra money. Do you know exactly how much that's going to be? Because if you do, you understand the whole process. If not, you never really know. So anyway, that one I just thought I'd throw out at you. How is the VIX staying so flat with so many cities and states? The VIX eventually will probably see a little bit of a pop to the upside if we continue to see this growth in the virus. I believe that's the basis of this question. But for right now, things have gone at a different measure. As a matter of fact, here in Minnesota, they're going to be shutting down, but shutting down in a different way than we did previously. So maybe it's a little bit more of an open sort of an economy than we had before when we did shut down back in the early parts of the pandemic. So maybe we've learned a little bit of something. And so from that perspective, it seems like that's been at least keeping things in check to some degree. So I'm going to give you one last little run. Dow actually just recovered about half of those losses. Now it's down 63 points. NASDAQ continues to move to the upside. It's up about 60 points. I got a volatility index that's easing back. We just talked about the VIX easing back 23.25. The panic is not there right now. We would have to probably have some sort of a catalyst to get a little bit of that panic, to get that volatility index, to get that pop back up towards those 30s once again. But for right now, this area between 20 and 25, I brought this up yesterday. I'll bring it up again. This is kind of that no man's land, which means you're trading, but you're trading with a much tighter range. And you have to understand that because this is a different type of market when the volatility gets into this particular area. You're seeing what's going on today. You're understanding a little bit more, hopefully each and every day. And if not, make sure you understand through a lot of the educators that we've got here at Market Rebellion, best in the industry. That's what we're the most proud of what we do. The unusual options activity is phenomenal. We absolutely love it. But I'll tell you what, you've got to be educated first. If you're not educated, you will not have a great experience and you will get angry about what's going on. Folks, have a great day of trading and we'll see you tomorrow.